US President Donald Trump has said that he is not looking for war with Iran, but he warned that if a conflict did occur, it would result in quote-unquote obliteration. Trump was speaking to NBC News of US. His interview came a day after he aborted a planned airstrike against Iranian targets in retaliation for Tehran shooting down a US drone. Washington says that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will seek New Delhi's continued cooperation to keep the pressure on Iran. India has stopped buying oil from Iran, but it has been in talks with the U.S. to preserve an exemption from U.S. sanctions for the Chabahar port. It is developing in Iran. Pompeo arrives in New Delhi on Tuesday for talks that are aimed at laying the ground for a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi later on the margins of the G20 summit in Japan next week. US has taken yet another sweeping effort in its fight against illegal immigration. The authorities have planned to deport families illegally living in the states tomorrow. They will especially target the recently arrived families in the United States. According to Washington Post, the operation is expected to target over 2,000 families. The U.S. cities expected to hit by this wave of immigration raid have refused to cooperate with federal authorities. Police departments of Chicago and Los Angeles have terminated the ICE's access to the cities. Mexico seems to have turned to diplomacy to handle the illegal immigration crisis. Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard has reached out to around 19 other countries in a bid to stem the flow of illegal migrants. Mexico has promised U.S. President Donald Trump to tighten its borders under the threat of tariffs. The minister will be meeting his counterparts, especially from Central America, to devise the plan. US-Iran tensions are at a boiling high, but President Donald Trump does not seem to be showing any pressure. He hosted a picnic at the White House for members of the Congress in an effort to reach out to the legislators. Despite the tense international situation, the president seemed calm, even posing for photographs with the legislators. The picnic comes merely hours after the president tweeted out saying that he cancelled the strikes on Iran at the last moment. The U.S. has issued a clarification to reports of its capping H-1B visas issued to countries with data localization policies. Reports which emerged yesterday said that U.S. was mulling a 10 to 15% cap on H-1B visas issued annually to such countries, including India. U.S. rubbished all such reports. Indian External Affairs Ministry had responded saying that it did not receive any official communication from the U.S. over the issue. After the imposition of the controversial abortion law, Missouri has gone up one step ahead and refused to renew the license of the only abortion clinic which was functioning in the state. St. Louis Planned Parenthood clinic was refused a renewal of license because it had apparently corrected only 4 out of the 30 deficiencies that were pointed out. Clinic will continue to dispense functions under a temporary court order. UN Human Rights Chief has met with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. She is on a 3-day visit to Venezuela after being invited by the president himself. Prior to her visit, she had slammed President Maduro and the Venezuelan forces for squashing peaceful protest in the country with force. The UN Human Rights Council session will begin on June 24th. Venezuela and Maduro are expected to come in for some scathing criticism once the session is underway. UK's top contender to replace Theresa May as Prime Minister has landed, himself in a controversy. The British police were called in to Johnson's home by his neighbour after he raised concerns about a quote-unquote neighbour. Now, this many believe was a reference to Johnson's wife, Carrie Simons. Though many neighbors told The Guardian that they heard shouting and banging, the police reported everything to be safe and well. The Chinese President Xi Jinping today concluded his two-day state visit to North Korea, the first by a Chinese leader in 14 years. Xi was welcomed with great enthusiasm and treated to the North Korea's mass games aimed at depicting the close North Korea-China relationship. In his speech, in fact, Xi talked about nuclear issues and sticking to peace talks for greater stability and prosperity. The trip came at a time when talks between US and North Korea have completely broken down. Xi Jinping will be meeting US President Donald Trump at the G20 summit at the end of this month. Chinese President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un have reached a consensus on important issues, according to North Korea's official news agency, a news agency which released still photographs of the two leaders on the second day of Xi's visit to Pyongyang. The two leaders agreed to carry on friendly relations and discussed plans on strengthening collaborations between the two countries. Even after the resignation of Parliament Speaker, the protest in Georgia refuses to die down. Protesters are demanding that the country's interior minister also put in his papers after the police brutally left 240 people injured. A backlash was triggered by the visit of a Russian lawmaker to Georgia, which the people have received as the government's warming up to Russian influence. Thousands of Albanian opposition supporters continue to protest against the government. The protesters gathered outside the office of Prime Minister Edi Rama as part of the protest. Centre-right opposition parties are boycotting their vote after months of demanding an early national election. There have been also accusations against the government of vote rigging and other wrongdoing. The Prime Minister has claimed the opposition's main goal is to disrupt the country's efforts to launch full membership negotiations with the European Union. Over 20,000 students from across Europe protested against climate change on Friday. Protesters from 16 countries assembled near a coal mine in Germany, urging governments to take bolder action to curb climate change. The mine has become a focus of environmental protests. In fact, the protest in recent years after the operators threatened to chop down a nearby forest. Barriers with slogans like "There is no planet B" were seen. The protest came a day after European Union leaders failed to agree upon a plan to make the bloc's economy carbon neutral by 2050.
Sind die vegan oder nicht? Er möchte das nur nicht direkt aussprechen.
A suicide blast hit the Imam Mehdi al-Muntadhar Mosque in Iraqi capital Baghdad on Friday. Explosion took place during Friday noon prayers inside the mosque. Now, several people were injured. The exact number of casualties, though, has not been identified yet. As per the police, the attacker was wearing an explosive-laden belt. There has been no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. At least 30 people, including 3 children, were killed in a fire in a matchstick factory in Indonesia. Some of the victims were burned beyond recognition as fire swept through a house that doubled as the factory. The property has been rented to a businessman for the last 4 years. Relatives of the workers flocked to a police hospital where the bodies were taken. Police said that the cause of the fire was still unclear. A fire at an oil refinery in Philadelphia burned out of control on Friday. The blaze was visible from miles away and triggered explosions that were felt miles away and shook various houses. 3 fire stations and a hazardous material response crew were mobilized to the site. 4 employees sustained minor injuries and there were no immediate reports of casualties at the complex. Trouble simply does not seem to let go of the British sailing team as their boat came off its foil and tipped into the water merely 30 minutes before the start of the GP. Take a look at the comical chain of events. The UN Nations World Food Programme has begun a partial suspension of food aid to rebel control areas in Yemen. Suspension would affect around 85,000 people. The move has come in less than a week of the WFP accusing the Houthi rebels of diverting the food from people who needed it the most. The decision was taken after talks with the rebels on introducing a biometric registration system for food supplies failed. The head of a Mexico-based church entered a not guilty plea in a Los Angeles court. The leader was arrested on charges including human trafficking, child pornography and rape of a minor. The La Luz del Mundo church leader has more than 1 million followers worldwide and was arrested online, in fact, on June 3rd. His co-defendants Alondra Ocampo and Susana Medina Oaxaca also entered not guilty pleas. His bail continues to be held at an extraordinary amount of $50 million. Legendary singer ELTON has been awarded the Legion of Honor, France's highest civilian honor. He was conferred the award by French President Emmanuel Macron after the two men held talks on how to combat AIDS. Macron spoke to the crowd who gathered at the Élysée Paris for annual music festival and appreciated Sir ELTON's contributions to music and in combating AIDS. The people of UK welcomed on Friday the summer solstice at Stonehenge. Around 10,000 people gathered at the Neolithic monument to witness the sunrise of the longest day of the year. On summer solstice, the sun rises behind the heel stone. The ancient entrance of the monument and sun rays are channeled into the center, making a beautiful sight. The people were greeted by a beautiful orange-reddish sun as they went on enjoying themselves, playing music and clicking pictures.